One of the more interesting drafts that happened was by the New York Football Giants. Let's start off with so just so you know what you're looking at, the column all the way to the left is going to be when these players got drafted, and then the number right next to their name, that is where they were on the consensus big board. So obviously the big thing about their draft was the top two picks. That's what that was going to determine, is this a great draft or is this a bad draft, is simply with pick 5 and pick 7. They ended up getting two guys who at one point were the betting favorite to go first overall. Kayvon Thibodeaux at number 5 and Evan Neal at number 7. First with Thibodeaux, all these character concern things I think are just silly. Guy's a great player. And the character concerns didn't hurt him in college by any means, and even the character concerns are like, he likes to play chess. Like, that's just like a hilarious thing that they brought up. It reminds me of one thing I heard that is funny is Myles Garrett at one point. It was considered a negative because he likes to play instruments. So what the hell are we doing here? It hasn't slowed Myles Garrett down so much. The fact that he likes to play instruments, I don't think it'll hurt Kayvon Thibodeaux that he likes to play chess too much. And it's interesting because he's not the most polished guy on the field, but he's still got so much production. I think you can make the argument he has the highest potential out of any of these edge rushers. So he's someone who, it's where Jacksonville said, oh, we want Trayvon Walker, the athlete. It's like, Thibodeaux probably should have been the guy if you're just looking at ceiling. So, and he's really good regardless, has a high floor, high ceiling, both of those things. Number 7, Evan Neal, who Neal's an interesting guy. His balance isn't great. I think he almost might be too skinny, just given how tall he is, because he's 6'8". He will fall over at times, but he still had good production, and he still will be a great player. And of course, him being a physical freak obviously could be a benefit. And him playing right tackle with Andrew Thomas already playing left tackle, you're pretty good. Maybe the most athletic tackle tandem ever in human history. Maybe just the two biggest athletes just in general. So love those two selections. Everyone loved those two picks. I was a little surprised Evan Neal went, I don't know why you drafted Thibodeaux at 5 instead of 7. That was the only thing I was confused about. This has been talked about before. I don't get why you don't go tackle at 5. I'm assuming that the logic was they felt pretty confident Thibodeaux wouldn't go 6, but there was a chance, and they just loved Thibodeaux and didn't want to risk it when there were 3 good tackles on the board. So even if they didn't get their guy, they would be okay. So that's the only way I can logically think about that. And from that perspective, I do kind of understand it. We have some weird ones, but a couple of these I'm actually going to be higher on than other people will be. So, they had a decent number of top 100 picks, 5 top 100 picks in total, and a bunch of picks just in general. So Wan'Dale Robinson was a weird one. He's definitely a reach at, 84th on the consensus big board, goes 43rd in the actual draft. And I think a lot of people were confused as well. Like, hey, you don't need a slot receiver. And that seems to be who he is. He looks like a solid slot receiver from what I've seen. I actually didn't scout him heading into the draft, so I'll need to pay more attention to him. The question was, I have looked up a little bit about him since this pick happened, and he seems solid. I think he'll be pretty good. I'm actually a little surprised he was. I don't actually even hate this value as much once I've seen more about him. I get it. The question is this a need? But part of me, it was thought of like, could this be a Kadarius Toney replacement? The Jets front office said, we're not looking to get rid of Kadarius Toney, but that doesn't mean he can't be a replacement for somebody, because not necessarily in terms of someone's going to go, but just in terms of the Giants receiving core was so banged up last year, they might just want depth, which I do understand. I just felt like there were better receivers still on the board. I would have gone with an Alec Pierce personally, but, or George Pickens, but maybe they didn't want another, they didn't want a guy with character concerns, unless that character concern is liking to play chess. So maybe that's what they went with. But definitely an, interesting move there. Then you have Joshua Ezeudu, I believe is how you say that. So offensive lineman in Ezeudu, who, again, he's someone who I am fascinated by. So he's an offensive lineman who his advanced stats that tend to predict if he'll be good at the NFL level aren't spectacular, but here's why there's an exception and why, yes, there is a huge jump between where he went and where he is on the consensus big board. But what I'm interested with him is that he split time between guard and tackle. So I think the idea is, hey, we feel he can be a better guard than he was tackle, and he's getting negatively docked due to how he didn't play as well at tackle, but he was good at guard. We're drafting him to be a guard. If you simply view it from that perspective, then I think that there's some logic there. Still a reach though. 177, getting him at 67. You could have got him later, probably. And I feel the same way about Cordell Float. We'll say Float, who's another interesting guy where he's kind of just, he got docked a little bit just due to being kind of a skinny defensive back, a skinny cornerback, which I guess I do kind of get. So he was, whether it's a safety or corner, you're kind of more of a slot corner, probably is the move at 6'2", 170. So, okay, like, yeah, that's skinny, right? Very skinny. However, he was really good last year. So this could be an example of you're drafting someone who people were lower on due to physical tools when he was a better football player than he, is, at stepping on a scale. So when you look at that, that's kind of why you feel better about that pick. Again, that is a reach on the consensus big board as well of over 100 spots. Typically not great when you have a reach of over 100 spots on back-to-back picks, but they're still interesting guys. And someone like Daniel Bellinger, another guy who's very a toolsy tight end, has great physical traits. The question is, he's got some things he has to work on and hasn't necessarily shown that he can be a great tight end just yet. But that being said, again, that's not the worst take, not the worst pick to have with a top 100 pick. Get someone who is toolsy. So when you view it that way, that is fascinating. So these are three guys who I'm interested in. Just a little, felt like maybe you could have gotten them later and still gotten a better prospect as well. Also at pick 114, Dane Belton, who's another guy who's very much tested well. He's a safety who tested well, just hasn't, shown that he can make it work on the field. So again, 114, taking some flyers on these guys. I don't typically love that prospect, but I don't love that type of prospect early on. Later on, I actually have no issue with it. It's just like, the Trayvon Walker at 1-1, that makes zero sense. Getting someone here, it makes a lot more sense, I think. Micah McFadden is another guy who, if he was drafted last year, he goes earlier than 146. He was good a year before, not great in this pick. And so maybe the hope is that you're getting someone who can, recreate that. Maybe last year there was a reason for why he was not as good. Linebackers are inherently kind of fluky positions. So that's an interesting flyer to take as well. And with DJ Davidson, who was a 325-pound, 6'5" defensive lineman who's kind of this run stuffing type guy. Listen, he might not be someone who's ever going to be a superstar, but he should be someone who can actually, give you value immediately. And for pick 146, who cares? Like that's fine. At 173, they go with Marcus McKeithen, who actually had some pretty interesting statistics here and a couple of really good games at North Carolina as a guard. His pass blocking grade was really good according to PFF. So an interesting pass blocking guard, perhaps. So again, taking some flyers on offensive linemen, always good to get a couple O linemen in the draft in general, just for depth. If nothing else, you want to make sure you have some depth guys. He could be a quality depth guy, probably. So because of that, that's another reason why I am interested in someone like McKeithen. And then finally, the last guy, Darian Beavers, who I have to assume will just be a special teams guy. Seemed like, his role was mostly just kind of just chase the ball like he's a dog, just running after the ball. But what's interesting is that, it seemed like the consensus was a lot higher on him than what actually ended up happening. He was 108th on the consensus board, goes at 182. So maybe he could actually still play linebacker. Maybe this isn't a pure special teams pick, even though when linebackers go 182, typically they end up being special teamers. So that's what's interesting about it. So as a whole, fascinating draft with a lot of players I'm interested in taking flyers on, although I feel like they maybe could have gotten one or two more just like solid players in this draft. But with 5 and 7, that's what this draft is going to hinder on, are those guys what we think they are? And if they are, you're in a good spot. And I think they will be. So that's my thoughts on this draft. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.